Hello everyone, Namaste. My name is Vaishali Shah. I welcome each one of you to my session on Hindu culture and lifestyle. It's a book series which is about how to live Hindu culture, Hindu lifestyle. So today, as promised, I've got a very eminent guest with me from Atlanta, USA, who has authored quite a few books uh, on varied subjects like Mahabharata, Ramayana, and similar topics. Before we start our session, let's do a small prayer. Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Shakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guru Namaha. Uh, uh, Nilesh ji, namaste, welcome to my session. How are you?
Namaskar, and I'm doing great. Wonderful weather here, and thank you for inviting me.
Our pleasure, our pleasure. So I think rather than me giving your introduction, let's start our conversation and please give us some idea about your background, how it all started, and just give us about some idea about your journey.
Okay, so quickly, I mean, I'm just like another typical individual, like So in India, when at least in my times when we were growing up, my parents fortunately never forced me to choose what to do. But that time you would hear it's like an engineer or a doctor,
Yeah,
So
true.
I would say, well, that might have influenced me, but of course, I liked science as a subject. So my background is chemical engineering, bachelor's, master's. I also have an MBA, and so I did my bachelor's. I was there in India until I was 20, 21 year old. I finished my bachelor's. Then I came to Canada to do my master's, and then
Okay.
got into corporate world. And so that side of the life continued. On the other hand, right from the childhood, I was curious in many things. One of them was obviously, like when you hear growing up, about our civilization or our grantha and all, that some two extreme views. That's what I kind of looked at. One is like everything is there in our ancient narratives instead of using a scripture, because scripture is also a colonized word. So I try to avoid it, but that's not to say that's perfectly fine because people understand what it means. And the other view is extremely, there is nothing in it. That's a very leftist, so-called pseudo-modernist view. And I said there has to be a either golden middle, or either of these view could be true. So that's where I started my research, and I mean my own investigation, and that kind of led to very interesting things. And then finally, I am here.
Yeah, here. So then let's start with the topic like our timeline of certain events, because our today's topic is history. So
Mhm.
if you want to go backward from here, where do you see lapse? Which part of our history books you think is not written correctly? So let's go slowly backward, like maybe because before British or maybe before Mughals. What do you think about it?
Okay. So even before coming to, I mean, that's a great question. Like, where did we started deviating from the truth? Let's say, I
Yes,
mean,
exactly.
yeah, where does that come? The historical distortion. But you'll find the distortions are there in almost every field. I mean, not just limited to history. And so I will take you back even further. And let's say this, because this is a typical question that I hear, I'm sure you get it too, which is to
True.
somebody say, how do you describe Hinduism, for example? And I'll bring that to the history. And the answer that I like, that I had it from Vinoba Bhave, and that's something, it really made an impression on me. There is a trinity, think of as a trinity, like a three principles. And they come to revisit me everywhere. They come to revisit us everywhere, whether it's a history writing, investigation of history. Those are simply, it says achar sahishnutta, meaning endurance in conduct, like bias towards action. Okay,
Right.
bias towards action, conviction in the action. The second one is the vichar swatantrya, which is a freedom of thought. Okay, and the third one is a niti dharma, like having a conviction for the truth, no matter how the circumstances are tough against you. Okay, or not just the truth, that is one of the aspect of niti, like ahimsa, satyam, asteya, not doing plagiarism, not doing chori, right? For example, ahimsa, that's a very, try to solve the issues through discussion, through logical debate, and as opposed to like forcing your view. So if you look at these three, and anytime we find, whether it's colonial powers or whether even we ourselves try to deviate from this, we try to think it's a convenient way. अरे चलो थोड़ा सा झूठ बोला तो क्या होता है, something like this. It just adds up, the small one adds up to the big one, and then eventually it gets distorted to the extent now even many of our pro India researchers, those who have right intention, but their training is into a very non-dharmic setup. And so what happens is, even when they want to do research, they bring these non-dharmic methods to the table, which is like, which is very inductive, which is just a introspective. Introspection is great. I mean, we talk about that, contemplation, but only introspection is not enough. Or only sometimes shabda, like in our tradition, the shabda also has a value, the authoritative word. But what happens is, when you read something, say in a Purana, and then people think, therefore it is true. Well, all our Shaddarshanas will tell you that that is not at all true. In fact, that's just the beginning of it. All our Acharyas will say the Shabda is a beginning, but then there is a 11-step journey to Pratyaksha, and the Pratyaksha is the highest Praman in our Indian tradition. So that's where I think
that is also Western philosophy, right? Pratyaksha is in the sense something which you can see and then narrate. But as per Indian tradition, there is a lot of emphasis given on the experiential level. What you go when you go inside and what you understand. So how will you define this?
Okay, very good. In fact, see, glad you said experiential. See, experiential and pratyaksha, there is no difference. Now, the experience can be, see, there are two words that are used. One is a swarthanuman, and another one is a pararthanuman. So, for example, when I'm doing my research and I look at some evidence or whatever I do, the triangulation of explanation, prediction, testing, which is pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, shabda, pramanani, bring it all together. Right. So I am convinced that is my swarthanuman. But now, if I want to convince of the point that I have realized to somebody else, that is a pararthanuman, and then I need some additional tools. So say if I go in the meditation, let's say the Yoga Sutra, I'm following Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, and I have my certain experience. So that is my Swarthanuman. That's experience. That is Pratyaksha for me. But now I have to find a way to turn that into a Pratyaksha for you or Pratyaksha for somebody else. Okay, so there is no difference between Pratyaksha and experience. Say, like a Sakshatkar, that is the word we will use, right?
That's a perfect word for that, yeah.
Yeah, and that, so Sakshatkar, experiencing it, or Pratyaksha, they mean the same thing.
Okay. So then we come to our main question is that where you find that in history, especially before Mughals or from time of Mahabharata till Mughals, or from time to or till Vikramaditya, which is 2000 years, or maybe when Chanakya was there, which is around that time, or Mahavir, who was around 2000. Around same time, Buddha was around 2500 years. Correct. So in that time gap, where the distortion has come?
Okay, very good, great question. See, I'll also give you a metaphor, but just with that. So for example, unless there are two viewpoints and they are conflicting and people are really disagreeing, we don't have a problem. Okay, so until then, for example, it was sufficient to say that, Mahabharata happened those many thousand years ago or some time ago. Ramayana happened long time before that. And as a tool, as a framework, for example, in Indian tradition, people used words such as Kali Yuga, Dwapar Yuga, Treta Yuga, and something like this.
The timeline is given to those yugas.
What is it?
The timeline is given for each yuga.
Yeah, we'll come to the timeline in a minute. But so yes, they use some reference. This is just like people use Neolithic and the different words, right? Holocene, Pleistocene. These are different words, or Bronze Age, Copper Age, Iron Age. You need some framework, and people were using a framework. Now the question comes when, for example, like let's get to the yuga. What if a yuga, just in our tradition, has multiple different definitions that are contradictory and conflicting with each other? Now the question comes, which definition one selects? Somebody will say, in this Purana, I see this definition. Another person says, I see this definition. And they don't agree with each other. And they both try to use that same two different definitions of a yuga. They still call it Kruta, Dwapar, Treta, and Kali and all that. And try to do it, they are going to get different answers. Okay, so then sometimes
but on what basis your timeline is set? Because my main question is the timeline.
Great. Yes, excellent. Yeah, wonderful. So, for example, I tried this yuga tradition or yuga theory, and I found that to be not only not useful, but actually a disaster. And not because for my thing, but when I looked at the work of other people. Okay,
Hmm.
so I said, let's forget that for a minute. Let's just. I saw my work started with Mahabharata. I said, let's just go to Mahabharata. Okay, and if you want to know about Mahabharata, if I want to know more about you, I have to come and ask you, right, or your parents. Same thing, let's go and ask the Mahabharata that question, when did it
Right.
happen, same thing with the Ramayana, same thing with Rigveda. I mean, these are my three big words. So what I found is, now how do you start? For example, there are different claims. Usually the new revolution comes from the fact, if you look at a problem that is not being solved by others but they are aware of it. So I found one specific problem called Arundhati Vasishta observation, where
Right.
Arundhati Vyasa is describing going ahead of Vasishta. Whereas astronomically, all the people who have tried for last, I don't know, 500 years, nobody could explain when, I mean, would it go ahead? When would it go ahead? If at all it would go ahead. And I'm saying, just like, why would Vyasa might say this? I mean, why he has to say something that is next to impossible? So I started studying on it. So to solve a problem, you propose a theory, then you find a way to objectively test it, then you draw the inference. That's how my journey started. So what I did is I asked the question to Mahabharata, and I found Mahabharata just started talking to me in the language of astronomy, and I extracted 300 plus different astronomy observations. And just like our crossword puzzle, jigsaw puzzle, when you
Right.
put them together, they kept on pointing me to one date. I mean, some gave me just approximate interval, like Arundhati gave me, said it did not happen. Arundhati observation told me it definitely did not happen anytime after 4500 BC, which means it did not happen anytime in last 6500 years. That one observation told me. It did not tell me when it happened. It told me when it did not happen. And that's also a method
Yeah.
of our
That is
darshanas and
another
science.
method. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I went to the next one, next set. So I extracted 300 plus observations. Sometimes they tested individually, like this Arundhati, sometimes tested in a group when appropriate. And it took me to that year 5561 BCE. That's 7,581 years ago from today.
That is Mahabharata.
That is Mahabharata. Then, just to make it short, the exactly same thing I repeated for Ramayana. And so my theory is very simple, that all the astronomy descriptions of the Mahabharata or Ramayana are the actual factual visual descriptions of the sky in
Yeah.
astronomy
Yes.
of
Yes.
those times. Yeah. And not to confuse with astrology, by the way,
Yeah.
so
I know.
not
I
to
know. I
confuse. Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. But
There is a
people will
difference
do, the
between their
viewers might. I typically I get emails and contacts after that, I want to show my chart and my son is getting married, and now that now that's also a science, of course. I mean, my wife is a astrologer, so she does that. So I pass those contacts to her.
Very true. But then I know that cosmological occurrences which are there and they
Mhm.
are always noted in the scriptures, which are
Yes.
very well understood. But my
Hmm.
question is that you think that those occurrences would never get repeated,
Hmm.
because if your observation is, for example, this comet, passed through so and so destination, and that is when the war happened. So, do
Hmm.
you think that that comet would have never passed before that or after that? So,
Yeah.
my question is that when we take observation of the universe and the cosmological atmosphere, whatever you call it
Yeah.
as,
Yeah.
from there those occurrences are not getting repeated. How do we know that?
Brilliant question. Thank you for asking this. Okay, so what you said is actually true, that most of the astronomical thing are repetitive in nature, cyclical in nature. Okay, so
Exactly.
like moon completes one cycle in 1 month, sun will complete one round in 1 year, Jupiter will do that in 12 years, Saturn will do that in 30 years. Same thing for
Right.
comets. Okay, however, it's very important that not everything is repeatable. Okay, so just like our seasons, like we get the Varsha season and we get the Sharad season and we have the
Also,
Garba. We have the Garba, so we see that. The last year also the Garba was fun. This year also is equally fun, but it's similar, but it's not identical. The
yeah.
same thing happens with astronomy. And our sages, by luck or with their wisdom, whatever their objective was, they have encoded some of the astronomy observations, and not just astronomy. I'll quickly come to beyond astronomy. in such a way that some of these events, for example, this Arundhati Vasishta, just as a because we described it, this event only, as if you go in the past, it only happened once. How about that? It never ever happened in the past repeated times. It only
But
happened
then
once.
what time? In how many years? Like
Yeah,
lakhs
yeah.
of years make kitni baar?
Correct, correct. It happened. So Arundhati started walking ahead of Vasishta sometime from 11,000 BC to 4,500 BC, and that's actually what it tells you. It tells you that, but it never before, and that has a astronomy explanation why it happened. Then you look at Bhishma Nirvana. It gives actually another narrow bracket. It says the Bhishma Nirvana evidence, if you combine, it can never happen before 7,000 BC. It can never happen after 4,500 BC. That
Wow.
is a so I wrote one whole book on Bhishma Nirvana. In fact,
Yes, yes.
frankly, I can write one book on just purely on Arundhati Vasishta observation. It is that fascinating and that critical and that
Wow.
revolutionary. But quickly, what I'll say is, after that astronomy, I gave me 5561 BC for Mahabharata, or 12,209 for Ramayana. Then I started exploring multiple different hard sciences. So now I have, now meaning not now, even last 3 4 years ago, I have evidence from 12 plus different disciplines of science. So geology, hydrology, potamology, geophysics, morphodynamics of river, oceanography, climatology, seismology, paleontology, genealogy, our tables, kings discussions and all that, genetics. I mean, you just
Genetics is a
name,
very big science.
yeah, and genetic evidence. I mean, I have given a lecture and I will encourage our viewers and also you, and I can send you the link, where I recently discussed the evidence from genetics that such a marvelously supports 5561 BC as the year of Mahabharata war.
Okay,
And
good.
those people who wrote the genetics paper have no idea what Mahabharata is. They are not from India, no connection whatsoever.
Okay, so these are some of the science which you mentioned.
Hmm.
Now I want to understand whether those science were developed, the techniques
Hmm.
which of
Yeah.
we count the carbon print, then we count the age of the like for
Correct.
example Ram Setu, they
Yeah.
said that it was built some million years back.
Hmm.
So those kind of observations which are done by various scientific tools. So what
Yeah.
do you think? How accurate they are? Because the reason I'm asking you is because first of all they are not. Their latest thing.
Yes.
They just got developed in last 50 years, maybe 100 years,
Correct.
not more than that.
Correct. Correct.
And so then when there was no science before that for Europeans the whole science started only after 300 or 400 years back,
Correct.
not
Correct.
more than that. Before that they were really living in the caves, or
Correct.
maybe they were not very advanced at all in knowledge.
Correct. Correct.
So how much can we trust those modern sciences, and
Yeah.
how much that is getting aligned to our scriptures? The reason I'm
Yeah.
saying is that what
Yeah.
we are studying in the paठshalas and in Vedic
Hmm.
जो हम गुरुकुल सिस्टम में जो है, so वहां
Correct.
पे they have particular, and I have one thing I've observed, गुरुकुल from north south east west सबके content और उनका context सब कुछ almost same है. they
Yeah.
are,
Yeah.
they are not disputing with each other on lot of things, but
Hmm.
the modern science ka timeline, the technology, not only timeline but
Hmm.
technology, referring of the place and the age of the place. Now we
Hmm.
have couple of places in Kutch where they said कि यहाँ पे nuclear war हुआ था. So when did it happen? Because
Hmm.
उसकी जो age they the new scientists gave was I think more than 5,000 years back. So 5,000 years back the nuclear weapons were not there, at least not known to us. So
Correct.
how do you compare these two sciences?
Okay. Okay. Actually, you asked a lot of questions there, and that they were all great, by the way. So let me see if I can break it down. First thing, obviously, you are correct that in last 400 years or so, the Western science really made a lot of progress, amazing progress that they made. So it's very recent. That is correct. Now, what we should not forget that most of that development actually became possible because of the sciences that were developed in places like India and China and whatnot. Okay, so it is not, see, when it's a science, it's not their science versus our science. It is our science that they have taken and taken it to the next level. Okay, and so we kind of took a lazy approach for many reasons. We'll not go into that, the colonialism and whatnot, the Islamic invasion and survival and all that. But so it's not like their versus our. It's a science, it's a science. It's ours. Vaisheshika Siddhanta, one can read Ayurveda to see what a fast Charaka Samhita. to see what a fascinating stuff that is there. So that's one. Now, can we trust them? Yes, we can absolutely trust them. Now, trust meaning trust those techniques. Now, depending on what specific thing we are studying, what specific technique, the ability of that particular technique has advantages, also has limitations. Okay,
Right.
so it's not so much like if I can trust the technique or not. There are, see, in my research I found out that many people would be perfect lab technicians. Okay, so they can do their job fine, but using that evidence to relate it to our dating or chronology, they are disaster. And so what I did is I started writing, I said beyond the basic method of scientific discovery, scientific logic, we also need Vijnana Buddhi, we also need Tantra Yukti, and we also need Tarka Shastra. Again, if you look at these three, they go back to the same thing, the Achar Sahishnata, Vichar Swatantrya, and Niti Dharma. So like Tarka Shastra, using the Tarka Shastra, we should not get into Jalpa, Vada, Vitanda, Hetva, Bhasa, Chala, Jati, because our objective should be to know the truth, right?
Yeah, of
We can,
course.
yeah. Then the third point, you said there is a complete agreement across this Pathashala in terms of how it is taught. Yes, it is there. What you will find is that our whole Indian tradition of investigating anything is actually through Vada. Like Krishna says, basically in a Vibhuti Yoga, Krishna says, Vada is like my Vibhuti. Vada meaning not the Vitanda Vada, in a very discussion. All our scriptures, all our grantha are like a discussion. And
Yeah, they all
people are
are
asking,
question answers.
right, question answers. Even Shiva and Parvati ji, दोनों भी question answers से ही हमें
Yeah.
समझा रहे, because it's a very effective one. So what you find is there are like in our times also, I mean even in the past times, for example, just 300 years ago, if you go to Nilakantha Chaturdhar, you will see when he's writing a commentary on Nilakantha Bhashya, it is called, on Mahabharata, he is giving opinions of different individuals. Like this person says this, which is different, and he is giving a third opinion. Krishna, if you see in Bhagavad Gita also, he will do that. These people have said this, somebody is saying this, but let me tell you what I think. Okay, and
Yeah,
through
he
that
has said that.
right, through that the progress happens. So it is the same method. I mean, so there are different viewpoints, and that's perfectly fine. And Nyaya Darshana, our short darshanas, for
Yes.
example, it says Adhyatma Jnana Nityatvam Tattva Jnanartha Darshanam. So darshanas is a tool to find out the truth. And
Yeah.
so Nyaya Darshana will tell you to basically go through this. Nyaya Darshana says no claim, doesn't matter where it comes from, is intrinsically valid. No
That
claim is
is true.
intrinsically
But
valid.
then all our six darshans are about logical
Yeah.
aspects of life. Even the
Yes.
Jainism and Buddhism, if you see,
Very much.
they all work
Beautiful.
on the logic
Yes.
and
Yes.
right and wrong, and that framework is only that. But
Correct.
beyond, when we go
Even
to the
yeah.
bhakti movement, or when we go to all the Vaishnava acharyas, when we learn their techniques,
Hmm.
then they go on experiential level where you are trying to connect your soul to the supreme soul. So their process is different, and their experiential level and that sakshatkar which we say is different. But
Correct.
my question to this thing is that, again, coming back to our main topic, is when it is not matching, like for
Yeah.
example the modern, or you said it is ours and all.
Hmm. Hmm.
So where is the, how do we build the bridge now? How do we either convince them to accept this timeline, or whether the timeline which you have framed about
Hmm.
all this based on these sciences,
Yeah.
why there is a conflict, and if there is a conflict, how do we come out of it?
Okay. Great question again. Again, I'll quote you the Nyaya Darshana. Okay. So it says Pravartana Lakshana Dosha. Why do people have a faulty understanding, faulty comprehension? Okay. So for example, if for a specific thing, say take Mahabharat war, the dating of Mahabharat war, for example, again my subject, and if there are two claims, right now, do you know that there are 130 different claims for the year of Mahabharat war? 130 different claims. Okay.
Yes.
Out of that, 10 may be from the Western world. So when we are saying them, we don't have to worry about convincing the Western world.
Yeah, actually you're right.
Forget them. And most of their claims are still so juvenile. Like, somebody sat in the chair in Harvard and said, I think it happened in 400 AD. Okay. So there is a, Hitchens razor, Christopher Hitchens razor, and Hitchens razor says whatever is claimed without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. So somebody just sitting in the chair saying something, forget it. But let's come to even our side, meaning the pro India side. And if there are two claims, now we need to definitely figure out which of the two claim is correct, unless we are saying that there are two Mahabharata war that happened. Okay. Right? So in Nyaya Darshana, the Pravartana Lakshana Dosha, so why the faulty understanding comes into being, why somebody gets sticks to a certain claim, it says three reasons. Okay. It's basically, it says attachment to a certain claim. Okay. It's basically, the word uses a raga dvesha moha or raga dvesha muda, a attachment to a specific claim, aversion, a feeling detest towards another claim, another specific claim, and stupidity. It says muda. Okay.
Muda.
The lack of intellect is also reason for, because I would say 99% of the time, if two claims are presented, although we may never able to say with a confidence if one of them is correct or not, okay, we will 99% of the time, if we study, we can always say which one of the two is better. जब आप साड़ी खरीदने जाते हैं तो थोड़ा वो रिलेटिव चॉइस है आपका, ड्रेस खरीदने जाते हैं, but still I'm saying, you look through multiple one and then say, okay, I'm buying this. There is some logic at an emotional level maybe, but it goes into it. In case of these claims like that, there is a very solid scientific basis. Scientific, when I say scientific, I mean Shad Darshanas. Okay, Vaisheshika, Nyaya, Purva, Mimamsa, the whole basis is there. Yeah, the grammar, the Vyakarana, everything is there.
My question about timeline is, why I'm asking, because now India and people out here are planning to change or working on, or they are aspiring to change our history books.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering that what fact and what point of view, which one they would like to take. And
wonderful.
They should take.
Yeah. Wonderful. Again, a great question. In fact, what now India is trying to do, we faced it here in America not that long ago. In fact, we are facing it for 10 years. What happens is in the California textbooks, if you have heard about the California textbook controversy, I was involved in that,
Yeah, and I was also involved. I'd written few things for them.
Yeah. So, Krishna Maheshwari, if you know Krishna Maheshwari. Yeah. Right. So I mean, so you are aware of it, but maybe for the benefit of our viewers. So one thing I suggested during that point, see, I am convinced of 5561 BC as the year of Mahabharat war, for example. I am ready to convince anyone who is willing to be convinced, willing to comprehend, anyone in the world. Okay, anyone in the world. But when we were writing, we're trying to make modifications to suggestions for California textbook. I did not say simply put down 5561 BC. I did not say that, although I am convinced of it. I said, right now they are writing that it's a mythology, it's just a story, and so on. I said, how about this? And this is what I suggested. I still have that email, which is what I said. I said, how about we writing this? This is a history, Itihasa of an Indian civilization. And I said, the many individuals have tried to date this specific event. Okay, there are 130 plus different individuals. They have tried to date this particular event, and their dates range from 500 BCE to 7300 BCE. That is the range. Okay. Now, what that would do is a curious student, just like I was became curious in my childhood days, a curious student would say, it's a one event. Why are there 130 different dates, and why do they range from 500 BC to 7300 BCE? He or she may get into the study, may get into the depth, may do his own or her own work and reach some, take it to the next level. Can you imagine? Forget what the West is thinking. Our own side was not willing to accept this proposition and put it into our books. Yeah, so that's a challenge the India is going to see if they want to modify the textbook. And so quickly, another point I will say, I get this question all the time. So Nilesh, what are you doing about textbook change, or when your research work will come into the textbooks? What is government doing? And I said, what are you doing about it? Are you telling your family members? Are you telling your neighbors? Are you telling your children? Are you telling your grandpa? When we make this jana mat, people understand it, government will listen, the politicians would listen. But politicians will not do anything that will affect their vote share. if it's going to split them, right? They will not, and rightfully so. If I'm in politics, I have to do the same thing. That is why I'm not in the politics. But and I really admire those who are in. So I think that it's a step-by-step process, but we all need to do our share. We cannot just, somebody cannot, the viewers cannot just look at you and me and saying, guys, do something. It will not happen unless every single person gets into action in their own limited way in Swadharma. This will not happen.
Okay, so now give us some idea about the books which you have written, because I would like my viewers to know what is your,
Right.
I think you have
Yeah.
more than one books, but
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
want
I'll quickly show you what I have, and I don't have all of them in a way. I mean, I have all three, but like some from, so my first book was this, When Did the Mahabharat War Happen? Okay. This is available on Amazon, like in Kindle and paperback. Okay.
okay,
Now, yeah, but what was happening, they're printed in America and then getting shipped to India. So they were coming out very costly, like a $15 turns into, I don't know, 1,000 rupees or so. So one, this wonderful fellow, this is Subbu publication. So he actually, this one is lot better than the Amazon version, meaning the quality and everything. So same book. So it is now available in India through Subbu publication. So Subbu publication, yeah, Subbu publications, all three books are available. By the way, just Subbu publications in India, these three books, I don't have a second one. And this is second one is third one is a Bhishma Nirvan. Bhishma Nirvan. This is When Did the Mahabharat War Happen? And I have the Amazon version of the third book, The Historic Rama. Somebody borrowed my Subbu Publications book. The Indian name for the historic Ram is 12,209 BCE. I made it very
I
easy.
was wondering, why did you change the name?
Some technique, some editorial issue, because the ISBN number used and some very minor thing. And I made it very easy for them too, right? 12,209 BCE. So they don't have to remember one more thing, So the year of Ram Ravan Yuddha. I'm working on the fourth book, which is a brief history. So brief history of Indian civilization. And essentially, I am going back, creating a framework. So my work has shown, it's not published yet, everything. The Rigveda is not published yet. That our civilization, we have, just like I told you, all these different fields, like different disciplines of science. We have solid evidence with a full confidence we should able to assert that our civilization is definitely more than 24,000 years old. Actually, it is a lot older. But the evidence that I have already brought out, and some of my co-researchers, is taking us more than 24,000 years, very confidently. And now, yeah.
In this, sorry, continue.
No,
so this you're sure of?
Yeah.
Okay, but then my next question is, what do you think about Aryan invasion theory?
Okay, no, good. So I have worked on Aryan invasion too. But see, I did not have to independently work on Aryan invasion. You take any of my book, and it doesn't have to be book. You can watch my videos. I mean, people can watch my videos. See, what is Aryan invasion? I'll quickly give you the answer. This is, and if people can watch my plenary talk at IIT Chennai, at the Swadesh Indology, Rajiv Malhotraji's conference number 3. So the talk was how to falsify Aryan invasion theory. Okay, in simple words, it's a 4: who, when, where, what. So what does Aryan invasion theory says? Aryan, some race known Aryan, people known Aryan, so that who came from somewhere outside India to inside India, that is where. They came sometime after 2000 BC and before 1200 BC is when. And what finally big deal is, they brought with them either the Sanskrit language or a precursor to Sanskrit language. They brought with them after 2000 BC. And then they sat on the bank of Saraswati, which did not exist, by the way, after 3000 BC, and wrote Rigveda. And then, we have, there are 100+ descriptions of Saraswati in the Mahabharata that happened 7,500 years ago. There are many descriptions of Saraswati in Ramayana that happened 14,000 years ago. And there are many descriptions of Saraswati in Rigveda, which are not possible, I'm telling you, anytime after 10,000 BC, anytime after 20,000 BC.
And so that Aryan never came from anywhere.
Correct. And of course, the people were migrating back and forth everywhere. I mean, we have gone outside multiple times. I mean, yeah. So, I mean, we have evidence all the way to Ireland, I mean, my co-researcher, if you look at Mrs. Rupa Bhattiji, I don't know, she's in Gujarat. She's based in Gujarat, in Gandhidham. And so if you look at the map of Ireland, very old maps of Ireland, you hear Indic names to the rivers
Right.
like Gangani, Darini, and the names of rivers.
Munich in Germany.
Yes, yes, yes. And the whole rivers, the Danu, like a Danube and Danu, I mean, those, that means Drava, comes from the Indian Drava. So the
Right.
effect of a language. So the connection is there. That's not a surprise. So where does Aryan invasion theory fits into this? My point is, if you just look at a Mahabharata dating, Aryan invasion theory is gone. If you look at
Exactly.
Ramayana dating, it's gone. Rigveda, it's gone. If you look at the genetic evidence, it's gone. Even the simple, humble domestic mouse. अभी गणेश चतुर्थी चल रहा है ना, तो उनका वाहन जो है, that is also the, if you go to find the house of a domestic mouse, the original house of a domestic mouse, it is India. From there it has gone to all around the world. This is a paper of Bonhomme 2007, and I always love to show that, so even the domestic mouse has gone out. Now what's the big deal? The domestic mouse is directly connected with a civilization, a settled civilization, a agriculture based civilization. And how does mouse go? Mouse go out, the domestic mouse goes out with migrations, human migrations, domestic, type of settled migration, and also commerce. Like, the on the boat, the mouse, with all the grains, they will go through the boats. And the Indians were great in navigations, and Indians were great in agriculture. We have evidence of agriculture going back to 45,000 years. People don't know
Exactly.
this in India. And that's why we have powerful astronomy, because astronomy is required for agriculture and astronomy is required for navigation on the seas.
Both the places, yes. Otherwise, how would they have gone so far? Like
Yes.
one of the migration which in Gujarat, we have Luana community. They
Hmm.
come from Afghanistan originally.
Yes, yes,
So then they came to Pakistan, then Kashmir. They ruled for a few years, and then finally settled in
hmm,
Gujarat. So
yes,
if they say we migrated, it's okay. For
yes,
them, it's
yes,
a migration. Maybe
correct,
within India only, but maybe from one place to their original place too.
correct,
Similarly, today even Sindhis can say we migrated because they come from Sindh to different parts of India. So people
correct,
don't understand when it comes to migration that of course people must have gone and out, but we Aryan as an Aryan, this race,
yeah,
we are the people that I think
yeah,
I'm so glad that you said that we are the Aryans and we are the people when we were always here.
yeah,
Another theory which is related to Aryan is Dravidian theory, which is
yeah,
dividing north and south.
correct.
So give us some idea about Dravidians, how they
Okay,
became.
yeah. See again. So use the word Dravid. Okay, so couple of points I'll make. So Manu in a Bhagavad Puran, when you hear the story of Manu, okay. So Manu is. Do you know what he is called? He is called Dravideshwara in Bhagavad Puran. Manu
Wow.
is called Dravideshwara. Okay. And as you go back, and so as I'm researching, and also my co-researchers, what we are finding, just like to what you said, the migrations out, we are finding, of course, within India, back and forth migration, around the world also back and forth migration with India. But some of the developed technologies and stuff and astronomy within India also came from the south. And by south, immediately I don't mean Tamil Nadu. Actually, we have to go even all the way to Lanka and Maldives and Indonesia and even that areas, right?
Right.
Bali is with a Wali. Okay, so that's one. Now the second aspect of, now you are what, from the last name Gujarati, is that
Yeah.
correct? Yeah. So no, it's for a reason I'm going to use that. I'm from Maharashtra. Now people sometimes will say, like, now the Tamil Nadu, I mean, some of the specific very breaking India groups have taken these to, like, some Tamil pride and very, very, very inferior kind of things, breaking India things. But when they ask, they will say, oh yeah, you guys. And being in the Maharashtra, I'm sure that happens to Gujarat too. The north people sometimes will think you guys are from south, and south will think you are from the north. It happens in Maharashtra, I know that.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, right. And so I'm saying, somebody says, oh, but we know, what do you know about Dravid civilization or something? I get that question. And I said, well, I know reasonably well about my own civilization. And they say, what do you mean? And I said, have you heard the term Pancha Dravida? Okay, so there is a Pancha Dravida. There is one discussion of a Pancha Dravida. Specifically, they're talking the Pancha Dravida Brahmin and Pancha Gauda Brahmin. So
Hmm.
Gauda is like some other ones taken. The Pancha Dravida, do you know who they are? They are Gujaratis. I mean, Gujarat,
That's
Maharashtra,
Huh.
Andhra Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu. So now possibly what they did is Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh kind of joined together, and Kerala, Tamil Nadu would be there. I said, yeah, I'm a Dravid. And where does that? Why Pancha Dravid? And why the word Dravid? Because Dravid word comes from a dravya, liquid,
Liquid.
fluid, which is that ocean. So in the Indian
Yes.
context, you are seeing the ocean is kind of covered there. Now, of course, the ocean is there in Orissa and Bengal also, but because they use that term to call Pancha Gauda, Pancha Dravid, and then Pancha Gauda, like which would include Saraswat, the Saraswati, and from Bengal. That's why they did not use the word Dravid. So Dravid simply means related to the ocean.
So the
That's
place
all.
which is
Yeah,
close to the ocean, maybe. So it is
close.
it is about physical location of the place.
Right. And so, I mean, all the Arya, I mean, if these people want to, whoever they idiotically want to call Arya versus Dravid, okay,
Right.
the origin of Arya is a Dravideshwar, Manu, right? So what are they talking? So actually, if people see again, this goes back to, if people simply uh, keep away, that is that mana buddhi. So take away their biases and use the samyak jnana, a balanced attitude, buddhi, emotion of a buddhi, not emotion of a mind, which goes into this attachment to something, aversion to something, and stupidity. Stupidity is a state of a mind, not buddhi. If they start reading it, they will find this. It is there. it I mean, this all information is there. There is no north versus south, there is no east versus west. In fact, as we go back in antiquity, you will start finding there is no us versus them in the sense of even Western Europe versus Indians, or even Arab versus us. You will find that there are these are our migrations. Many migrations happen out of India.
Yes.
I have friends who have told me in Syria, this person trained in an Indian colonial education was telling them how Arabs are great, and they have done some great things in the past. The Syrian group of fellows started telling him how they have a knowledge that these things came from India. So Syrians are proud of Indian technology in Syria. I mean, I have many instances like that.
Yeah, so similarly, I found in Japan also that
Hmm.
they revere and they acknowledge their religion. Buddhism
Yeah,
came from India, and
right,
there are so many gods. Their gods and our gods are similar. Saraswati, Ganesh. There are so many gods. We have. And I had done this series on the website. Just to kind
yeah,
of let people know that how much similarities are there. So
correct,
towards my last question,
sure.
now because I understand that history. I think history. It's time we change the history. But what do you think about? I wanted to ask you something very important. I forgot, but I wanted to ask you about. I think about history only. Yes. So what do you think about history books? Like, if we want to change, what we should change? That because that question I did not. Still,
Okay.
I think we need to.
Oh, no, wonderful. Okay, so I mean, because we are talking of Indian history, let us understand the concept or the definition, Vakhya of a Indian history,
Right.
Itihasa. So Itihas is obviously much more than a dating, although dating is a very crucial part of it that no one should ever avoid. Okay, it's that important, but it is not the only thing. Now, what is our definition, the Indian definition of a Itihas? It says dharmartha kama mokshanam, right? Upadesham samanvitam, purvavrittam kathayuktam, itihasam prachakshate.
Right.
Okay, right? So purvavrittam, ancient events, explained to us in a katha form, in a katha forms, in the sense that's why they are we can get the message out of it, the upadesh, the suggestions, the guidance, the learning, and it comes in a very entertaining, educational, enlightening way. It's a easy to digest, easy to understand. So katha yuktam. And what is the goal? That updesh should help us with dharma, artha, kama, moksha. And so, if you want to achieve that, the itihas should be such. We have to tell the truthful itihas, both the good and bad of that is happening, so that we don't make the same mistakes again if there are mistakes.
Right.
Okay, because any civilization will go through this prakruti, vikruti, samskruti.
True.
Some bad things will come, right? Okay. So but what do we need? I will say, just as an example, there are many, I mean, some of my co-researchers or some of my good friends. One is Mitra Desai, and she's in Australia, or Deepali Patwatkar, she's in Pune. The person I told you in Gandhidham, Mrs. Rupa Bhati, she's more on the original research, but on the civilizational side, history writing side, these people that I just mentioned, or Manoshi Sinha, she has looked at, I forgot, Saffron Swords. I think that's the name of her book. Okay, so
Yeah,
what she
I
has
think,
looked,
yes, I know.
right? Yeah, last 1,000 years, and people think there was no resistance to Mughal invasion. Well, if there was no resistance, we would all be Mughals, and we are not.
Exactly.
There was resistance. So she has collected many stories. In some form, these stories need to be taught. If I have time, I'll quickly tell you what Mahatma Gandhi said. Very, very interesting. When he was in a Sabarmati ashram and he started the Nai Talim, there's a Gurukula type of, trying to revive the Gurukula system. And there was very illiterate lady in that ashram. I forgot her name. And so he said, okay, you teach students Itihas.
Hmm.
And she was like surprised and startled, and she said, "Mai kya sikhaungi? I mean, what can I teach?" And Gandhiji said, he said, "I'm not asking you to teach when Ashoka came and when Kalinga king came and when he died and what he conquered. No, I'm not asking you to. Just share your experiences." She was an old lady. She said, share your experiences with the students. That is the definition of a itihas that Gandhiji had in mind. And I would agree, which is again goes back to dharma, artha, kama, mokshanam, upadesham samanvitam, right? Puravrittam kathayuktam, itihasam prakshakshate. So I think we need to find out, we need to have this broad definition, never to confuse with the dating though, because dating is very important if you want to wipe out this Aryan invasion nonsense, the leftist communist nonsense. We must have this, because once you have it, their whole nonsense that they have created last 70 years or last 250 years just falls off like a ripe fruit from the tree.
So I think this is, I mean, I'm so happy that finally you also agree that we need to have our scriptures and our history into our textbooks, because
Absolutely.
otherwise there is no way people are going to know. And then they will, they will then, otherwise they would settle for anyone who's claiming to be any scholar. And then we would, think what they are, so-called lefties and all those people will accept. So I think, I hope you will also be working on towards that our history books are changed. And I hope, because I'm really emphasizing on wherever I go, I say that we must learn, our scriptures, and we must learn the content which is given.
Yes.
Maybe we put them into cosmology, science, and all that different areas, but at
Correct.
least have some sutras from every scriptures. So the book series
Absolutely.
which I've written, I've taken the proof of every subject. Like in physics,
Very
what
good.
was there? The
Yeah.
lens, the lens was there. So
Yeah.
how the lens was created. So
Right.
similarly, agriculture, cosmology is there. And I've also taken, yes, Vedic mathematics. So only a few examples, because I want people to know that that thing, and we knew it, and that knowledge was with us. Now it's
Yes.
time that we again come back to that cycle, and we study our scriptures. Like, for example, in Japan, they have their own mathematics. I'm sure you know their own style of writing the numbers.
Yeah.
In even in China, it is just the same. So I think it's time that we study our own scriptures as well. So I think with this note, we will end our session. I
Perfect.
can see. Yes. Yeah, I think, yeah, only a few good comments are there. So I think
Okay.
with this we will end, and I
Okay.
hope to see you again, because we have not met
Definitely.
physically. So somewhere we will meet up.
Yes. Yes. Definitely.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank,
very much again.
thank
Okay.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for coming and giving us your time and your information. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Namaskar.
Namaste.